All right, welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday. Happy to be joined by the president of the Bridge and Tunnel Officers Benevolent Association, Wayne Joseph. Thank you for joining me. This is episode number 60. We did one episode last week, number 59, and this week we're back to 3. But kicking off with you, Wayne. Thanks for joining me, man.
No problem, man. No problem at all. Glad for the invite.
So I always start off by asking everyone where they're at and where they've been quarantining during the pandemic. Where you look like you're in a backyard smoking a cigar, having a good time. But where are you at in the world?
I'm home out in Nassau County, just relaxing. Just got in from the office, and I'm doing what I normally do to unwind and relax. And I have a cigar and an adult beverage.
All right, that's good. I usually have an adult beverage here, but I didn't have anywhere to put it with all my equipment to get this going. But I'll have one after. And
live vicariously through me, man.
Exactly. Yeah, have 2 for me. So let's kick it off. I mean, I know you're a 3-term president of the Bridge and Tunnel Officers Benevolent Association. Tell us about the organization and how you got involved.
On August 31st, I'll be starting my 29th year. I first started with the union probably in '99. I ran for president, got lost, had no idea what I was doing. Rightfully so, I lost the election. Ran again for vice president in '02. Wasn't successful there either. But in the interim between '99 and until I became chief delegate in 2005, I was an alternate delegate at the Midtown Tunnel. And then in 2008, I ran for grievance chairman on the executive board, was successful at that. Did 1 term as grievance chairman, and in November of 2011, I was elected president of the organization, of the association. And here I am today.
Well, obviously,
we have an election again this year, so hopefully I'll make it back and for another term.
Well, hopefully some of your guys are watching and then they'll vote for you. Hopefully it's not as contested as the presidential. That says a lot. I mean, you've been involved with the organization and you've been, an officer for 29 years. What's it like to lead, a bunch of other, you're technically peace officers or police officers?
Yeah, we're peace officers.
Okay. So before I ask the next question, can you define what a peace officer is or the differentiation between that and a police officer, just for those that might not know?
Pretty much the only differentiation between peace and police is making arrest on warrants. We can't arrest on a warrant, but we have the same police powers, carry weapons, difference in pay, obviously. Training is a difference. They go through a much more rigorous training, initial training with their academies, things of that nature. But we do a lot of annual training, so we're up to speed on a lot of things.
Absolutely. So now, I know you were on the front lines and you were, you're sitting in the bridges and tunnels, and then you become a delegate and, work your way up. Now as president, what is the day-to-day, duties and role, moving into that position?
I mean, pretty much just fielding phone calls, answering a lot of questions, resolving certain issues, dealing with labor relations department and MTA occasionally, sometimes Albany through the governor's office, since we're a quasi-governmental agency for the state, because we fall under the MTA. So we're an affiliate of the MTA, whereas all the other agencies under the MTA are subsidiaries.
That's so you stay busy. And I mean, how important was it that, to be the president of the union and the union rep and dealing with all, doing all the intergovernmental, work and lobbying and working with the MTA? Like, how important was it for you, to being on the front lines, and sitting in a car and working the tunnels so that you can understand every nuance and situation that you can then apply when you're advocating for your, fellow officers?
I mean, for the most part, it's most of it's common sense. It's mostly retention. You read things, you retain the information. When I was early on in my career, I was a junior person. They didn't hire anybody between 1992 and 2000. Wow. So I was one of the junior most officers at the Midtown Tunnel. And as a junior guy, you get what's left, and you get stepped on and trampled on a lot, and that just wasn't in my nature. So before they took us out of the tunnels, I never liked to go in there. I'm kind of claustrophobic. So I would go in there and I would take everything that I could and read it, because, you know, I knew eventually my mouth would get me in trouble and I need somebody to get me out of trouble. And I didn't have faith in the then union. So I figured I need to learn the rules to the game so I get myself out of trouble. So I just took everything that I could into the tunnel with me and I read, and I just retained it. And I became the junior senior guy. The senior guys were asking me, like, how'd you do that? How'd you pull that off? What's this? What's that? And that eventually, you know, manifested into me being, I guess, you know, somewhat of an unofficial union representative until I became the actual alternate delegate in 1999. Then I could officially represent people.
So you're saying a lot of guys on the job just go to work, do their, you know, their 9 to 5 or whatever their shift is, go home. But you spent all this time reading the handbook. When you initially started, and because I love that story, and you've told it to me in the past, did you do it? Again, you did it more for yourself to get out of the, you know, to find the loopholes, but then now you use it to, you know, create new policies and to advocate on behalf of everyone else? Or did you have this vision of like, I'm going to be somewhere in this union one day, I'm going to be leading these guys?
That leading the union or even being a part of the union was the furthest thing from my mind. I did it solely to, you know, keep myself out of trouble, because again, I had no faith in the then union. So for me, it was a survival of the fittest kind of thing. And then again, it wound up turning into me actually running for office, and now I'm the president of the union. So pretty much that's my daily, you know, function. I advocate for the members. Policy setting, I don't set any policies. I don't have that type of authority or power. I get very little input on policies. As a matter of fact, I probably am the last one to know. I find out about policies after they're implemented. It's just the way they do business over here. You know, the Labor Relations Department is, I would say, I can't use a word, but, you know, they're horrible to deal with, put it like that.
Understood. And so, I mean, talking about that, you know, people that are tough to deal with, but let's flip to, you know, over the course of your career, you know, whether it's now as president or as an alternate delegate, or, you know, again, sitting in the tunnel, like what's been your most rewarding aspect of your 29-year career of the job?
I mean, it's so many things, I would say, and not even accolades or anything like that. I mean, it's just, I just like helping people. I just don't like to see people get stepped on and taken advantage of, which was, again, why I started reading and retaining all of this stuff, because I was getting stepped on and taken advantage of. So then, it was pretty much that. That was the motivation behind it, which, again, wasn't my initial intention, but it just parlayed into that.
So then, I mean, you know, if that's your most rewarding thing, I mean, you've definitely first saw change, and then now you're able to impact and make change. Like, what's the biggest difference from when you started, like, you know, someone who's entry level, just getting started, and now that you're the leader and the president, someone who's getting started now, like, what's the biggest change over the course of that time period?
Well, they haven't hired anybody since 2009. So it's really hard to speak about anybody that's being hired now and what the biggest change is. But I think overall, the biggest change is the job itself has changed. When I started in 92, we had toll lanes. We had an automatic lane that you would throw a token in. Those disappeared in around 96, 97 for Easy Pass. They started to attrit the force, and the numbers dropped until they realized that they actually needed us to get people out of the lanes that didn't have their Easy Passes affixed to the windshield or to the bumper properly. Then 9/11 happened, and there was a huge increase in security functions. And then they scaled back on that. And then now we have open road tolling. So there are no physical toll booths. Everything is automated. There are gantries overhead. So the job changed totally from maybe 80% toll collection, 20% law enforcement, to now 100% law enforcement. So that would be the biggest change that I've witnessed over the last 28 years that I've been in.
So then, I mean, and I see that every time you go through Midtown, I mean, you know, the Midtown Tunnel. I mean, I'm not going to try to list off, you know, the properties that you guys protect, but there's always a hefty presence outside. So you're saying that it's in law enforcement. what are you guys looking for, or what are you tasked with looking for and enforcing?
Well, right now, what they had us doing pre-pandemic, and since the toll lanes were removed, we were operating the license plate readers. So pretty much what we do is we look for people that haven't paid their tolls, basically. So we'll get a hit from the license plate reader, and be a little investigation done once they're stopped, and then there's going to either be a determination that the plates were suspended for failure to pay their tolls or not. And if there is, then we take the car, we send it to authorized tow, and the individual has to then go and square their bill away with the MTA and the state in order to get those plates back on that car. But right now, post-pandemic, we're pretty much just securing the facilities, watching out for overheight trucks so that they don't get past us and things of that nature. But it's pretty hard with the, cut. They reduced the manpower so much that it's hard to do anything out there now. Roll calls are pretty much cut in half. You're running with half staff pretty much. And they're using the National Guard supplement some missions that we are supposed to perform.
So, so the budget cuts are, even though like we haven't really talked about it yet, meaning not you and me, but like the state government's saying that things are going to happen. The city government is saying that things are going to happen, but it hasn't really hit yet because we're still feeling out what's going on and the pandemic's not over. But you're saying that budget cuts are already happening and manpower is already down because of budgetary issues and because of the pandemic.
Well, I don't want to call it a budget cut because we're not in any financial crisis in this agency. The rest of the MTA may be, but this agency, although they're not going to gross what they normally do, they'll still wind up with a surplus. Based on public authorities law, it's mandated that our surplus after operation and administrative costs are met, get turned over to the MTA and the Transit Authority. So we generate money every year, so we're not in the red like the other transit agencies. So I wouldn't call it a budgetary cut. I would call it they call it humanitarianism or humanitarianism, whatever the word is, excuse me. They think that they're committing an act of some type of humanitarian solace, so to say, for the workers. And since this pandemic has started, they don't have as many people working under the guise of social distancing and population density reduction, but it's nothing more than them trying to eliminate overtime, pretty much.
Understood. And I know the separate from you guys, the MTA has had
beat up over here.
No hurricanes today, man. No hurricanes.
Fix this. Hold on a second.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
In case you're wondering, we're live.
Exactly.
Now you can see me, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit harder to see now because it's done. But still hard to see you. Sorry. There we go. Now you're back. That sun is tricky with the camera angles. So let's going back to the tunnel and you saying that you guys are still generating revenue despite the staff being down. I mean, it makes sense because I was in the city the other day and people are still driving through the tunnels. In fact, I would assume that more people, those that are coming into the city, whether you're commuting from Long Island, Queens, New Jersey, wherever you are, you're driving in. So I understand the MTA separately, the bigger budget, being down because how many people are swiping their Metro cards? People have fled the city.
They're not even collecting tolls. I mean, they're not even collecting fares anymore. So
they're not?
Oh, there's no fares on the buses.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't even know that. I mean, so I mean, it makes sense that that you guys are okay. Having a surplus and as far as budget goes, because you still have commuters coming in. But has the volume of traffic started to increase now, or is it this plateau that's stayed low since the pandemic started?
It's been increasing little by little since they reopened things and going to phase 3, I believe, in the city. But it's nowhere near the volume that we're used to seeing, at least at the Midtown tunnel. I can speak for the tunnel. I really can't speak for the other facilities because I'm really not there as much.
And what's it like? I mean, what's it like now? Whether it's at the Midtown Tunnel, let's stick with that because that's where you're at most, and you see it, and like after 9/11, you have this like major impact, this shock to the system, for New Yorkers, for New York City, and then this, real clampdown as far as security, where you guys are tasked with, with doing law enforcement at the tunnels, and I know that, there's still a lot of that in place, whereas now you have this pandemic and it's, let's stay away from people. Let's, be a little bit more hands off. Let's wear a mask. What's it like to, go from this, like this, or to get back to that level of security that you guys were at prior?
I mean, it wouldn't take much. I mean, they just have to pull a trigger and rescind some of the directives that are out there right now, and we be back to normal. Outside of that, it's pretty much basic day-to-day law enforcement, pretty much.
Okay, cool. So then, I know we talked about like the reduction in force and that being, maybe, a false, a false hope as far as protecting peace officers and, your union guys, your associates. What have, has the state done, or, what have the directives been, that, have protected, those who are out there, in force during the pandemic, and, how are they staying safe?
Well, pandemic wise and health wise, they really did little to nothing for us. Initially, we couldn't wear masks. Wow. If you had a medical issue, they would allow you to wear a mask, but you had to provide your own. They wouldn't provide us with gloves, hand sanitizers. We actually, as a union, went out and purchased hand sanitizers for the membership. Some of it I bought out of my own pocket initially. We got a couple of our vendors, our benefit providers to, kick in, and they bought some hand sanitizers for us. We got a donation of masks from one of our, an associate from one of our members. We handed those out. So pretty much the agency didn't do anything until maybe April, maybe mid-April, I would say, or maybe even later than that, as far as providing us with things. And even at that point, they were still slacking. Cleaning supplies, they gave us some cleaning supplies that weren't. There's a list that's out there. I believe it's the EPA puts out a list of all COVID chemicals that can kill COVID. Some of the things they gave us to clean the vehicles with and the workstations with, they weren't on that list. They didn't fight COVID, so it was just a mess.
And I mean, have they come around now? And I mean, now that everyone is like, now that there's the supply of masks, gloves, hand sanitizer has increased, and it seems like you can get it and it's readily available anywhere. Have they provided you guys with better equipment to protect your officers?
We're still mask wise, I would say yes. They provide us with a mask every day. If we need one, there's also the KN95 masks. You can get one of those, but you have to turn it in every 5 usage, and they'll give you another one. So there's a lot that's could be done better, but I mean, at this point, what are you going to do? People already know that, the agency could care less about us. They could say all that they want, but they really don't.
I see the electronic signs everywhere on all the highways that COVID is still a risk. So wear a mask. I mean, it would make sense to equip officers who are protecting our bridges and tunnels and everyone throughout the city with the right equipment. Whether they choose to wear it or not is a different story. But I think that only makes sense, and I'm sad to hear that. But definitely dealt with government before.
Most of the agencies did the same thing to their employees, so the MTA is not alone in this. But I mean, I think that it could have been handled a lot better, a lot differently. There were a lot of warning signs initially, things that we discussed that they just turned a blind eye to, that eventually they came around on, and they provided us with what we needed. Yeah.
So, and I want to switch to a little bit. I mean, it's not controversial. It's been very public and written about that. You're in law enforcement. I know we'll stick to the bridge and tunnels and try not to get bleed into anything else too much. But crime is definitely on the rise. Shootings are on the rise. Throughout the city and large cities nationwide. Have you seen any more riffraff or things going on near the bridges and tunnels? Do you think crime is on the rise? around the bridges and tunnels, or, vehicular crime? Like, what's your take from the law enforcement side?
Pretty much we only deal with incidents on the property. Just besides some of the, I guess, protests that were going on a little while ago, there hasn't really been much of an increase in any crime on our facilities, but in surrounding neighborhoods, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I would have to say yes, just based on the statistics that are out.
I mean, is it tough for you?
For the most part, we only get involved on things that happen on our facilities.
Understood. But I mean, again, but as a New Yorker and as someone who's in law enforcement, seeing it from the outside, I mean, do you think that, that it's being handled correctly, or if you were in NYPD or other, law enforcement agencies positions, do you feel that, hands are tied a little bit more than they were, and therefore that's the reason behind this?
100%. I mean, there's, I think what I call it is a knee-jerk reaction that these politicians are doing right now when they're passing all of these laws, and I think that it's not conducive to law enforcement officers carrying out their jobs. I mean,
yeah,
at the subdue or restrain somebody, but they just made it a crime to actually use your weight and put your weight on somebody to restrain them, and fear that you may restrict their airway, which I totally get, but you've just taken a huge tool away from law enforcement officers that we use on a daily basis should we have to restrain somebody. They pretty much taken away one of our levels of force, which would now probably result in us using a higher level of force, which would be an impact weapon, or God forbid, a firearm or tasers for those that have them, because physical force has now pretty much been eliminated to a certain extent anyway. So I don't agree with it. I think if with the right training and if you carry, your functions out properly and how you were trained, should be all right, as long as you don't use excessive force.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough to see, New York City, teetering. I mean, I know, look, there's people who say that it's doing fine, then there's people who say that it's, burning down and it'll never be the same, but it's definitely, I guess it remains to be seen what's going on. But I definitely think that there's some need for, there's need for some reforms, but, there's still need for enforcement of the law. And, there shouldn't be, these pop-up shootings everywhere, and, people settling things on the streets, like mobsters used to do back in the day before the Giuliani era.
Yeah, it's turning into the crack era all over again. There's no disputing that. I mean, the numbers don't lie. The statistics speak for themselves. So it's definitely out of hand. I don't know what can be done to fix it. There's definitely something needs to be done. What it is, I don't know. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah. Have you got have the unions or the law enforcement unions like kind of grouped together to really like put pressure on the city and state, or you guys all kind of go it alone?
Well, some law enforcement unions, and I'm part of this coalition, so to say, have filed paperwork in court against these knee-jerk reaction laws that I call them, and trying to have them enjoined and have an injunction filed so that we can actually go out there and perform the functions that we need to in order to subdue and restrain perpetrators.
It must be interesting to you because you a lot of this is not affecting your properties. You guys are you're sort of in a bubble and away from all the stuff that's going on maybe 100 feet away.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's I'm not going to say that it indirectly affects us, because what happens around our facilities sometimes trickles onto our facilities, and we're tasked with that responsibility to respond and take action. So it's quite possible that it could wind up on our facilities, but it's just the dynamics. Just geographically, things are moving, cars are moving. There's really no people congregating in any location. So it'll be a hit or miss, a one-off if something were to happen like that.
So I'm just going to ask this because this is a personal question that I really wanted to ask, which is that like, so if an incident happens in Midtown Manhattan and someone is like, it's hard to, in regular Midtown traffic, it's hard to be a getaway driver and speed away. But let's say there was those, 1990s, 2000, all the helicopter chases, on the LA freeway, but if someone were able to get out of that traffic, which again, it's taken me an hour to get around the corner in Manhattan, so I don't see people getting away so fast. But if they were, and then they popped in the tunnel, you guys take over, and meaning once they're in your property, that's your jurisdiction, and you can take over that chase and then continue it through, or how does that whole thing work?
Well, we would probably get notified by NYPD or with whatever agency is in pursuit that, they're following somebody or they're in pursuit of somebody and they're coming our way. And then we would, pretty much stage at that location and try to assist in the pursuit as much as we could without endangering the lives and welfare of any of the other motoring public. So it's happened already. There have been some chases that are terminated on our facility. There have been some chases that have, going through our facilities, or they've traversed our bridges, getting to the other sides, another borough, trying to evade police. So, I mean, it happens from time to time. It's not very often. And we get that call that says, something in your way, help us out. What happens? So when it does, we're ready and we're there. We're prepared to do what we need to do.
Of course, it's good to have you guys to intercept. Do you guys ever use like the dump trucks or sanitation trucks to block off if you were dealing with a situation like that? Do you have them? I've seen them on certain bridges, certain tunnels. I have them nearby.
Well, we have state trucks that the National Guard, they man those trucks in case of an emergency and we do a hard closure. We used to use our own trucks, but with the reduction in personnel at each facility, we don't even have enough personnel to perform those functions. Which is a huge issue and a concern. But I mean, there's a plan in place. There's just no personnel to carry it out.
It's tough to hear. So now on that note, let's switch to personal and fun. So what have you been doing to stay healthy and active during quarantine, during the pandemic?
To be honest, I haven't quarantined. I've been back and forth to the office doing my normal routine. When I need to be in the office, and pretty much that's it. I was never a big person on going out and things of that nature, so that didn't affect me at all.
How about travel? A lot of people say that when we can get back to normal life, they want to travel, they want to do things. Anything that you're missing from normal life? I mean, even though it seems like you're living pretty normally, but anything that you're missing from normal life?
I mean, travel. I don't travel much, but this year I planned on doing a lot of traveling. I was going to go to Hawaii for my 50th in June. Wasn't able to do that. Can't go anyplace else now. You can't even travel within the United States because every state is almost every state's quarantined. Coming back to New York, you have quarantine. So not much as far as traveling on the personal front.
How about any shows you've been watching? Anything, any movies, anything good as of late that you've been watching during having a little more time?
Yeah, I've been binging on a couple of series on Netflix. Other than that, just my usual, man. Nothing major, no changes really for me.
All right, cool. Any word? I know we talked about the negatives, but any words of encouragement or positivity for folks that are worried about the state of New York City and New York State?
I mean, I really don't know what words of positivity I could give because we are in the middle of a pandemic that nobody seems to have a grasp on. The CDC is changing their regulations on a regular basis. The governments are not in accord with each other. So you got where we're kind of, fine right now. You got other states that are experiencing huge numbers. So it's hard to give any advice or offer any positivity to any of this because we have no idea what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, whether there's going to be a vaccine, whether there's going to, how many people are going to actually take it. I mean, I'm not. I mean, who knows? They don't have a grasp on this thing. So to take a vaccine for something that you don't have a grasp on now, to me, could be to your detriment. Put it like that. I'll sit it out and wait to see what happens with everybody else before I take it, if I take it at all.
It's like the new iPhone. Let everyone else play with it and feel the bugs out. And when they perfect that, then you can get the new iPhone. But it's your body. If people do it for that, then for your body, you certainly be looking after yourself.
I'll take my chances.
Yeah, I don't
Like
blame
I've been doing so.
Yeah, no, Wayne, I appreciate. If anyone wants to find out further information about the Bridge and Tunnel Officers Benevolent Association, where can you guys be found online, and where can you be found?
www.btoba.org. All the information is there, and I'm available if anybody wants some information how to reach me.
All right, I really appreciate you joining me. Thanks for doing episode number 60 with me. Thanks for closing that again so we could see you, because we didn't want to go without your face. But it's always a pleasure to see you. Enjoy that cigar. Have that adult beverage for me. I'm gonna go grab one myself.
All right, brother. Take it easy. Stay safe, man.